For me, it was terrifying on several levels because I came to London all the time and Sammy Davis Jr. kept the association under its actual name. He paid the money every month until his death. He was right there in the Burbank store for 3 decades. When they finally opened it, investors found more than just memories. There were songs about his real mother, documents from conversations that could have destroyed his career, and evidence of what really happened to Kim Nowak in 1958. He documented everything. After 30 years of silence, the truth has finally been revealed. Sammy Davis Jr. was born on November 8, 1925, in Harlem, New York City. His parents, Sammy Davis Sr. and Elvera Sanchez, were both vaudeville performers. This meant Sammy had already entered the world in his blood. But part of his story remained hidden. His mother, Elvera, was Cuban. The family kept it quiet because there was anti-Cuban sentiment in America at the time. In those days, explaining such things could destroy record sales and public support. Even as a modern man, Sammy's life was shaped by racism and the need to hide parts of who he was. Harlem Alive, with the energy of the Harlem Renaissance, became his first stage, setting the tone for the rest of his life. By the age of 12, Sammy was already playing in the Will Maston Trio, an act led by his father and family friend, Will Maston. Most of the kids played games. Sammy danced and sang in theaters across the country. The meeting became his thick skin, but it came at a cost. He didn't have a normal childhood. Instead, he learned to smile in public and find his talents while other children went to school. Constante's touring was tiring, but it gave him strength. It also showed him the terrible face of racism in America. He saw signs that spoke only to white people and felt sadness that he was left otherwise. This inner fire to destroy defenses began young. At the age of 12, Sammy had another life. His parents separated. His father obtained custody and drew him even deeper into the business. Will Maston became more than a mentor. He became like a father figure, protecting Sammy in the best way he could. But there was only so much protection anyone could offer. Sammy saw the discrimination that black participants faced, but he also saw how to stop themselves. With talent, with love, and straight-up hard work. Even as a child, he was no ordinary child. Now he was a competitor, riding from city to city, leaving cheers of surprise. When Sammy was 7, he made his big screen debut in Rufus Jones for President. He starred opposite Ethel Waters in a film that seemed to imagine a black boy as president. The film was funny, but evoked a heavy heart. At a time when black smiles were rare in Hollywood, Sammy's smile lit up the screen. His singing and dancing captured hearts. The film pointed to the future. Sammy wasn't just a performer, he was a force. He had the rare ability to make people see past the color of his skin, even if only for a few minutes. But life on stage meant sacrifice. Sammy never went to school like other kids. There were no boards, no chocolates, no school bell for him. His learning came from the road, from books he found, people he met, and stages he encountered. He learned languages, instruments, and skills he couldn't offer in school. His thirst for knowledge matched his desire to perform. He proved that greatness doesn't always come from school. It can come from passion, loyalty, and a mind that never stopped wanting to learn. In 1943, everything changed. At 18 years old, 5 to 6. Tall and 250 pounds, Sammy was drafted into the United States Army. He escaped the safety of the stage and entered a world far crueler. He joined one of the first integrated bands, but the proposal for unity was a lie. The Army was absolutely right. The first soldier he encountered called him names. The brutal truth hit him hard. His ability meant nothing, but he fought to survive, facing fighting and hatred almost daily. The Army was meant to build people. For Sammy, this destroyed his otherness. The murder he encountered surprised him. White soldiers once killed him and painted him white from top to back, disillusioning everything he was. Once they killed him, while he was drunk, and covered him in urine. Some nights he stopped at him. His nose was destroyed 3 times, and it wasn't fixed. They caught him off guard to force him into the show. Twisting ropes were applied to his face before they threw him onto the stage. The brutality was endless, built to destroy him. One night, soldiers dragged him to a tree in the freezing cold. There he remained. Directly, like so many terrorist victims before them, cold bit into his face. But the pain lasted longer. It was a message. No matter where you go, no matter what you achieve, remember your place. The army didn't protect him. It looked different. That night stayed with him forever. A scar on his body and heart. It got worse. In one furious attack, a group of soldiers destroyed him so badly that he spent 3 days in the hospital. The destruction wasn't real. It was devastation. But no one was involved. The army, which should have avoided the Americans, allowed itself to be hated. Sammy stayed in that hospital feeling like he had to survive on his own. The pain drove him to dark places. He thought about ending it all. The heaviness of hatred, the inhumanity, it nearly destroyed him, but something brought him back. When he joined a group of soldiers, he found his weapon, his voice, his dance, his peace. Even the people who hated him couldn't anger him. His applause gave him strength. When Sammy Davis Jr. returned from military service in 1951, he was ready for the end of the world. He had fought for his country, and now he wanted to fight for his place in the business world. That opportunity arrived at Kirsko, the glamorous nightclub on Sunset Boulevard. It was March 1951. Sammy, as part of Will Maston's group, opened for Janice Page. The night was magical. But after the Academy Awards that same year, something incredible happened. A venue with stars like Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, Cary Grant, Marilyn Monroe, and Judy Garland. They watched in surprise as Sammy delivered an exhibition that made him look old overnight. The star was unstoppable. Shipments were pouring in. In 1952, he appeared on the Colgate Comedy Hour and even received a $20,000 television grant from ABC. This was incomprehensible for a black entertainer. The sponsor didn't stop him, but Sammy had already passed. The little orphan gave him a talk about the city. Just 3 years later, in 1954, tragedy struck. On November 19th, Sammy, only 29 years old, was driving his Cadillac from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. On Route 66, another car stalled for his thrashing. The change forced the car's key into his left eyelet. The change was permanent. He went to a community hospital, but doctors couldn't save his eyes. He only lasted 9 days. Friends like Frank Sinatra rallied behind him. Exhibition projects arrived 3 times his former number. Sammy took the eye-pan first, then the gray eyes. He joked calling himself a one-eyed German who is Jewish. Many thought his career was over. But 8 weeks later, he returned to the stage with Cyrus, once again disappointing Hollywood's finest. This outing changed Sammy's life in a different way. In 1960, he converted to Judaism. During his recovery, he read about the long struggle of Jews to survive. A friend, Eddie Cantor, gave him a mug of mezuzah and talked about the faith. Sammy felt connected. He said he had always been Jewish in his thinking. Many had defeated him, but he believed that being black and Jewish made him stronger. He became a symbol of directness and championed civil rights. Even as he developed, Sammy encountered cruel racism. In the 1950s, in Las Vegas, he could headline shows, but he couldn't stay in the hotels where he worked. He couldn't walk through doors or eat in restaurants. He chose not to. He needed a change. With the help of the Rat Packs, he disrupted casinos. In the 1960s, he made $25,000 a week at the Sands and became the first black entertainer to stay on the frontier. In the 1971s, Las Vegas hotels finally ended official segregation. Sammy helped make it happen. Sammy was more than a singer. He was a master of many skills. He learned drums, trumpet, piano, vibraphone, and more. He could exchange voices, throw parties, tell jokes, dance, and even perform troops. His performances were full of habit. He earned the name Mr. Show Business because no one else could. In 1956, Sammy chose Broadway over Storm. Mr. Wonderful opened on March 22nd. The show was written just for him. Almost inaudible for a black man at the time, critics hated him. The New York Times called him loud and dangerous. But Sammy's character filled the void. The show ran 383 exhibitions and recouped its $225,000 cost. It even transformed each exhibition into something new, transforming it into a nightclub activity. His father and father arrived on stage. The younger Chita Rivera was also part of the band. Sammy brought out the crazy stuff and the little romances on stage. He released a Broadway story. In 1964, Sammy released another story with Golden Boy. It opened on October 20th. He played a beloved black boxer with a white woman. When he beat her on stage, it raised questions. The killings and deaths ended, but Sammy became a company. His performance earned a Tony nomination. Around this time, he was also campaigning against Martin Luther King Jr. in Selma. Sammy played everything he believed in. His show forced audiences into difficult truths. Sammy didn't stop on stage. In 1958, he starred in Anna Lucasta. It was a black band with difficult problems. In 1959, he played in Porgy and Bess with Sidney Poitier and Dorothy Dandridge. In 1969, he appeared in Bob Fosse's Sweet Charity. In 1960, he also joined the Rat Pack in Ocean's 11. In 1964, Sammy opened the door for black actors in Hollywood. On television, Sammy was everywhere. He appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, The Tonight Show, and many others. In 1966, he appeared on NBC's Sammy Davis Jr. show. He was one of the first black enthusiasts to speak out on the network's premier variety show. Big names like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton flocked to him. He worked harder than anyone, giving thousands of interviews a week to promote the show. His success helped other black artists find their place on television. The friendship between Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. began in 1941. Sammy was only 15 years old. He led the Will Maston Trio in Detroit. Frank was 26 years old and touring with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. The moment Frank saw Sammy on stage, he knew he had met something special. Over the next decade, Frank continued to find ways to help Sammy. In 1947, Frank arranged for the Will Maston Trio to open for him at New York's Capitol Theater. This moment gave Sammy a huge respite and changed his life forever. Frank didn't just open doors. He stood by Sammy when it really mattered. In 1950, Sammy was turned away from the Copacabana in New York because of his competitive nature. Frank was sensitive. He asked Sammy to come back the next night. This time, Sammy stayed decent. Frank didn't stop there. He managed to hang out with Sammy, sit on the same board, and miss gigs at clubs that didn't strike Sammy as equal. At a time when interested blacks were forced to use private entrances and hotels, Frank's actions were cruel and dangerous. When Sammy nearly died in a car accident in 1954 and lost his left eye, Frank joined again. He paid the hospital bill and took Sammy to Palm Springs to recover. Frank wouldn't give him room to commit suicide. He told Sammy to return to the stage so as not to interfere or lose everything. Within a week, Sammy was back in front of the public. His strength had become legendary. Sammy intrigued Frank so much that he tried to adopt his style, even the ring in his hair. Her friendship showed the world what true loyalty looks like. It gave Sammy the strength to enter the Hollywood scene. In 1960, the world saw this friendship unfold on the big screen. Ocean's 11 premiered in Las Vegas on November 3rd. The film won awards for Frank Dean Martin, Sammy Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford. They played a war within War II, pulling off a massive heist. Behind the scenes, the Rat Pack recorded scenes at night and performed live at Sands and other clubs until the early morning hours. Josh Howard played Sammy, a key part of the set. The film grossed $5.5 million at the box office, about $55 million today. The final shot of the Rat Pack walking in front of the casino names became a unique image. Sammy was no longer a friend. He was one of the old guys. In the 1950s, Sammy made about $25,000 a week in Las Vegas. But even as he packed theaters, he couldn't stay in the hotels where he performed. Segregation forced him to stay far east. Sammy wouldn't let it. He became the first black enthusiast to achieve free peace and freedom on the frontier. This helped destroy the color barrier in Las Vegas. He held his own by supporting civil rights protests and buying ingredients at the Tropicana. When Niwata passed legislation in 1971 that ended hotel discrimination, it was partly because of Sammy. When he died in 1990, Las Vegas temporarily dimmed its lights. The place that once abandoned him now reveres him like a king. Sammy also left his mark in films after Ocean's 11. He starred in Sergeant 3 in 1962 with the Rat Pack. The film grossed $4.3 million. Sammy even carried a cassette tape which John Wayne paid for. In 1964, he appeared in Robin and the Seven Hoods. The film combined music, comedy, and drama. Sammy played Will alongside Frank Dean and Bing Crosby. These films weren't just funny. They showed that Sammy was an old woman in her own right. He helped change how Hollywood viewed black people. But Sammy's life wasn't all spectatorship. In 1957, he fell in love with Kim Nowak. She was one of Hollywood's biggest stars. They met at a Steve Allen exhibition. They soon spent time together and even met his family. But their interracial relationships proved dangerous. Only 4% of Americans took them. Emmett Till's treatment was still fresh in people's minds. Sammy and Kim tried to keep it a secret. Sammy hid under shirts in cars. They met at a beach house in Malibu. But in November 1958, an economics column reported that they had become interested. The news spread like a bonfire. The studio panicked. The youth were tied up. Sammy was killed by youths connected to the Colombian filming. They told him to end things with Kim or lose his remaining eyes. Which was better? Even mob boss Sam Giancana said he couldn't protect Sammy in Hollywood. Sammy was terrible. On November 7, 1958, he consulted Kim. He didn't want to. He had no choice. A day later, on November 10th, Lori White, a black singer, died. It was a cesspool for the mobs and the president. He paid her about $25,000. That night, he was so tired he tried to lose her. Later, his assistant found him alone with a gun. The march ended in November. Sammy's church with Kim cost him almost everything. It showed how dangerous the challenge of counsel was in America in the 1950s. Sammy Davis Jr.'s marriage to Mae Britt in the 1960s was more than just a union of two people. It challenged one of America's worst taboos. At the time, interracial marriage was illegal in 31 states. A Gallup poll from the summer of 1958 showed that only 4% of Americans supported black-white marriages. The couple's plan to die at the Temple of Israel in Holstein fell through after the synagogue received information about the bomb. They had no choice but to move the ceremony to their home in Holstein. Frank Sinatra and Peter Lawford stood behind them as witnesses. Sammy and Mae converted to Judaism before the temple. They became one of the various black and white interracial men in the meeting. Their sense of power was dangerous. Swastikas appeared on their home. Britt lost her contract with Fox 20th Century. Davis had been invited since President Kennedy's inauguration in 1961, all because of who he loved. The birth of a family brought its own trials. They had a daughter, Tracy, born in 1961. They later adopted two sons, Mark and Jeff. The hatred didn't stop. People shouted rational words from their cars. Their home was vandalized with swastikas. Sammy and Mae tried to protect their children by burying them with friends they considered their talents, not their advice. But the world outside this dump could be cruel. Tracy later said that at times she felt safe only to be surprised by the truth she encountered beyond her cruelty. Britt's career was over. The studio believed that no one wanted a white actress to die with a man. Even after their trip, Sammy remained active in his children's lives. He helped them with their German education and assisted with his son's bar mitzvah. In 1968, after 8 years of dreaming, Britt signed up for the trip. She expressed extreme cruelty and mental suffering. Sammy's conversation with singer Lola Falana was key, but their problems continued. His endless journey and the fatigue of public hatred left little room for his family. After resolution, Sammy's world fell apart. He turned to drugs and alcohol. Cocaine and amylonitrite became his escape. Back home in Beverly Hills, he transformed into a girl where the old-timers came to drink and use drugs. On stage, he became disillusioned. On stage, he was often drunk high and out of control. The difference between his cool and private suffering became divorced. In 1970, Sammy died with singer Elvera Sanchez. A spokesman for Jesse Jackson made it official. In 1989, they adopted a son, Manny, just a year before Sammy's death. Elvera gave him some stability, but their life was far from peaceful. Their home became a familiar one for the girls. They talked about drinking and drugging. Because of this, Elvera was completed by Sammy, while he struggled with drugs and later with blood. After his death in 1990, she was left with over $7 million in loans. She lost her home and most of her friends. She struggled with her drinking problem and struggled with her drug problem. A stunning contrast to her former glamour. However, she fought to keep Sammy's memory alive by organizing tribunes and working within the Christian community. Sammy's gambling addiction helped him destroy his money. He earned an estimated $50 million during his career. At times, he made around $185,000 a night. But he died after filing a lawsuit against the IRS for over $7 million. He could rack up $40,000 in a single night. Like Sinatra, whose money was often recovered, Sammy had to pay for his obstacles. Bad business deals and shiny cash rooms added to his problems. His wisdom also played a role. He collaborated with many people and spent too much money. In July 1972, he reached the top of the November charts for the first and only time. His version of The Candyman became the #1 on the November Hot 100. It sold over 2 million copies and achieved gold status. This was surprising, as Sammy initially hated the song, but its sweet melody and noble nature won over a new generation of fans. He stayed on the song, I've Gotta Be Me. In 1968, the song Living Fully and Staying True told the story of Sammy's own struggle for identity. He faced racism, religious bias, and even lost his left eye in a 1954 car accident. But he never let these things destroy him. He usually ended his scenes with a song, turning each scene into a statement of doubt and hope. Las Vegas became his chair. In the 1960s, he earned about $25,000 a week there. He helped change racist practices in cities by demanding balance. His programs included songs, dances, parties, and comedy. With his success, he helped define Las Vegas. His face still appears on casinos' walls and billboards, an accessible tradition. On television, Sammy also changed defenses. In the 1960s and 70s, he appeared on shows like The Ed Sullivan Show and The Tonight Show. His 1966 show made history as one of the first network programs hosted by a black host. He could sing dance joke and party, winning millions of hearts. But the dark side of his life never stayed. His drug use and drinking escalated during his years of cult exploration. Friends tell of nights of cocaine, endless drinking, and madness. Sammy himself denied that he wanted to try anything, but it remained a burden. His March with May was hit by a truck and a threat. He became independent. He once ended a show after one song. Although he later quit cocaine, his struggle with alcohol stayed with him. The deeper he delved into his dark pursuits, the harder it became to control his demons. During these years, Mr. Show's big business seemed at risk of losing everything. In 1987, fans worldwide were thrilled when Sammy Davis Jr. decided to team up with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. It's been a dream for years, and now the farewell tour has finally come to fruition. At first, it was called the International Farewell Tour. Later, when Liza Minnelli joined it, became a well-known ultimate event. This tour was bigger than anything the Rat Pack had ever attempted. They were no longer playing small nightclubs. They were playing massive arenas that could hold anywhere from $10,000 to 25,000 people. It was a powerful move, unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. The first win came at the Coliseum on March 13, 1988. At first it seemed like magic, but soon the screams started coming. Dean Martin was already 70 years old, and the direct travel and night games were too much for him. After half his wins, he retired, citing blood problems. The tour had to be halted, but Sinatra and Davis didn't give up. They brought Minnelli, and the concert ended. They finished the U.S. tour in Miami in November 1989. They then traveled to Japan, Australia, and Europe. The tour ended in May 1989. The actual fighting began in November 1989. Sammy began to lose his taste. His brain still felt the force. Doctors soon gave him honest news: cancer in the head. All those years of taste down to 4 packs a day allowed him to hear it. Sammy had a choice. He could let the surgeons remove his speaker to save his life, or he could have tried radiation to keep him singing. He chose his voice. He endured 8 grueling weeks of treatment. At first it seemed to work. The tumor spread. Sammy returned to the stage several times, but in June 1990, the cancer returned and spread rapidly. Surgery was no longer an option. Sammy couldn't even speak, and his weight dropped to about 60 lbs. Health took his strength, his voice, and ultimately his life. On May 16, 1990, at the age of 64, Sammy Davis Jr. died. My present in the world was too peaceful, 2 long nights and endless exhibitions. But it took a while. When Sammy died in his Beverly Hills home, the truth about his finances was revealed. Having worked with millions over 6 decades, he had paid more than $5 million. With criminal charges and business deals, he paid $7 million, which was approximately $13 million. His house was worth about $4 million, but the IRS paid it all off. His wife, Altavice, was left to pick up the pieces. Since she signs her own money, she signed her own money. She had to sell her 11,000 square foot house for $2.7 million. But most of that money was paid for with money. The money didn't stop there. Sammy still paid $2,000 for t-shirts, $500 for thick coats, and $118,000 in store cash. Even his money and future money moved to the IRS. Altavice fought legal battles for years. In 1997, it settled with the IRS, but lost almost everything along the way. The world watched in surprise as one of its brightest stars vanished not only in health, but also in happiness. The suffering intensified with the subsequent auction. In August 1991, more than 800 people flocked to Los Angeles. They came to buy pieces of Sammy's life. Over 500 of his personal items went up for sale. His gold record sold $4,750. The difference in his ropes brought in $11,000. People even bought his store's box fights and t-shirts. The auction totaled $439,000. It was almost impossible to hold on to the $7 million. Altavice cried as she watched his treasures fall into his hands. To make matters worse, some of Sammy's belongings were already gone. The list of 185 pieces of shop inventory and even an Andy Warhol painting disappeared. Then an opportunity arose that no one expected. On a recent afternoon in 1991, a 28-year-old man named Matthias Horenchik received a strange sum of $365,000. It was a convenience store he never paid. His ID was lost. A1 Self-Storage in Burbank went to check on him and found that the store had been paid with false information. Fearing something dangerous was hiding, the driver called the police. When they opened the store, what they found was shocking. Inside were Sammy Davis's Persian treasures. There was a trumpet, an antique singer, and a shop selling Candyman shapes, documents, and photos. Someone paid off the shop just 2 weeks after the auction, trying to hide the items. Police learned that an Altaweza employee helped assemble the items. He said the IRS went after everything and tried to salvage what was left. They used the IDs they had obtained and paid. If they had kept paying, no one would have known, but the IRS found out. They seized the items, hoping to recover more treasure. Altaweza said she knew nothing about it. This hidden shop is just another sad episode in a story of talent, love, and inheritance.